point, it is almost official that Dragonflight will be the next WoW expansion after Shadowlands. We have seen the codes on the official Blizzard website showing the various expansion editions for pre-purchase, and also Blizzard officially registered a domain called dragonflight.blizzard.com. However, people months ago already leaked this expansion name with 4 new classes with 1 spec, player housing, 6 new zones, and a bunch of other features. So is there any truth to this leak? What will we actually be getting in this Dragonflight expansion, and could these concepts be something that Blizzard never ended until now? The next expansion will be announced any day now, and the best way to still grab Shadowlands Heroic Edition is through Royal CD Keys. Aside from Warcraft, they have excellent deals on everything from software to games with a weekly €50 contest, and if you use my code DORON, you can get an additional 10% off. Check out my link in the description or the QR code on the screen and get the best deals with Royal CD Keys. So, the forums have been the fan fiction playground these past few months, with people coming up with all sorts of crazy concepts from Empires to Shadowlands 2.0. One of these concepts was from February when a user leaked the expansion World of Warcraft Dragonflight, which I gotta admit, I completely dismissed. I didn't even look at this immediately because I didn't consider it. But now, when they actually leaked the name, could the concepts listed actually make sense? And will we actually be getting these zones, Dalaran, and a bunch of other brand new things? I gotta admit though, as the dragons have been all but confirmed nearly half a year ago with the leaked textures, it is entirely possible that they were just lucky to guess this name, as really, if it is dragon related, what could it be? Either Dragon Isles, Dragonflight, or something of the sort, but maybe there is some truth to it. Maybe this really was a true leak. The thread starts out with Chromatus, which I gotta say, I don't think it is highly likely, but it is 100% possible, as the lore of Chromatus is kinda vague and can definitely be heavily expanded upon. According to the leak, Chromatus will be the main enemy, probably not the final boss of the expansion, but something like the opener bad guy with a lot of minor stories around it, and I'm guessing the actual big threat in the background. Now, if you don't know who Chromatus is, he's sort of a monstrosity created by the son of Deathwing, Nefarian, a dragon with 5 heads combining all the dragon flight, which each of the head representing one of the dragon aspects. Ultimately, he was rendered inanimate by the united power of the dragon aspects, with his body stored in an arcane prison. While he does seem interesting, and with 5 heads representing the name of the actual expansion Dragonflight, this does seem highly likely. It is possible they could use Chromatus as a sort of a vessel for what is to come, or for some new mysterious dark energy that could be the actual bad guy of the expansion. I doubt it's actually gonna be Chromatus, like the main villain. So now let's get into the interesting stuff, the meat of the matter, the zones from this leak. Apparently, we are supposed to get 6 disconnected zones, with 2 of them being revamps of the old ones, which I gotta admit, this really makes a lot of sense. It really does not seem like BS at all. Some of it really sounds legit. Imagine it as something like the Broken Isles or Zandalar and Kul Tiras with the surrounding isles. So the first and a small continent of its own would be the Dragon Isles, the crown jewel of all the dragon speculations. Now, while it would be a continent, it would apparently, according to this leak, be just one zone, split into multiple maps, apparently floating between the Broken Isles and Northrend, which is, according to the lore, as we don't really know the exact location of the Dragon Isles, but it should be somewhere close. This makes sense, as the zones have been heavily hinted at throughout the entirety of Warcraft history, and they actually intended to release Dragon Isles back in Classic. Now, the next of the 6th zone is the most interesting one and the super up to date with the current leaks. That is Lordran. As the leak said back in February, revamp Tirisfal and the Plaguelands with a Scarlet Crusade and Light Focus, and damn, I just gotta say, this actually seems super likely right now. If you follow the news these past couple of weeks, they actually revamped some stuff in Tirisfal Glades. The Scourge is attacking in Quatalas just north, which could be a sign of what is to come, and there has been a Lordran shield that dropped in the most recent patch. Additionally, there has been the lore of the Scarlet Crusade making a reappearance and wishing death to Anduin these past few years. So I gotta say, this concept is actually highly likely. I've already talked about it in a recent video. There has been some legit stuff behind this. According to the leak, the 3rd zone would be Quatalas, revamped Eversong and Ghostlands. This one is even more interesting and even more likely. If you followed what happened a few weeks ago, there is a Scourge attack in Quatalas, as I just mentioned, and seriously, the entirety of Quatalas has been begging for a revamp these past decade and a half, as it really just deserves an update. It is really just stuck in TBC. It is even more likely now, with Sylvanas' story as an elf and a lot of elven stuff going on. The leak even says that Silvermoon will be a hostile city similar to Suramar, although I'm not really certain what they mean by this. Maybe some sort of a civil war will happen, maybe something with Illyria, maybe something with Veresa, who really knows. The next zone is Undermine. This has been something we're talking about for ages now, and that is a city between Khazan, and something we really needed to revisit since Cataclysm. Like, we don't really know what happened to this place. Apparently, a fully underground zone with something to do with Goblin factions. Seeing that we got Mechagon back at BFA, I really can't say this sounds super outlandish whatsoever. Now, the fifth zone is quite interesting. Apparently, Balor. Now, if you don't know what Balor is, it is a domain west of Stormwind, essentially an island taken over by the Old Horde during the First War, but it was never actually added to World of Warcraft, and they never really nailed a definite location. So this is without a doubt a concept that could be reintroduced from the early Warcraft RTS games. The leak says that there will be some sort of a halfling race there dealing with primordial fell enemies, something akin to proto-demons, which could definitely fit in with the theme of a new expansion. And the final zone would allegedly be Uldaz, a second fully underground zone that will more than likely be something akin to a Titan facility or something of the sort. The leak points that it will be a Titan Elune storyline related thing, which I gotta say just makes a whole lot of sense. Elune has been hinted at to definitely play a role soon enough, and the Titans and the World Soul are pretty much more relevant than they ever were, especially as we visit the Zereth Mortis, the actual engine of creation itself, first ones, and all that stuff. So I can't say Uldaz really sounds outlandish at all. That is with the zones. Now, the leak says in regards to features, we should be getting a bunch of things, especially new and highly requested ones. 4 new micro classes with 1 spec instead of 1 full class, player housing, carpenter and logger professions, and apparently Dalaran will be relevant again. There should be no level cap increase, and the Order Hall stories will continue. Apparently, you will be able to pick these Order Halls similar to the Covenants and Shadowlands instead of being assigned to one automatically, and there will be no gameplay difference between any of them. Just stories, the campaigns, mounts, and Asimok's, like, that will be different, but pretty much there won't be any significant differences. So let's actually unpack these features and see what could make sense out of all of them. Let's just discuss them. There have been some legit hints for Dalaran being relevant again, and seeing that this is a moving city, it would 100% make sense. I know some people might think that it is cheesy to use Dalaran yet again, but personally, I think that would be cool. I love Dalaran, I've always loved Dalaran, and I would love to see it updated again. In regards to no level cap increase, I'm not sure how realistic that is, but it would be something unique. Like, first ever expansion when there is no leveling. I can totally see that as something Blizzard would be experimenting with in the future. Now, an interesting thing the leak mentioned is player housing. Now, this has been something people have requested for years and years, and they kind of tried something similar with garrisons, but maybe player housing could become a reality, like an actually interesting one, not just garrisons. It might just be a big thing that World of Warcraft really needs right now to just bring some new life into the game, like something just completely unique and brand new, and to really get the old players to try World of Warcraft again. In regards to this, there have actually been some updates to some buildings being moved in Orgrimmar, for example. I doubt this will be the place for player housing, but maybe it is a hint for something related to it. Now, lastly, and the most interesting bit, aside from the professions, I don't really think the professions need much discussion, and that is that we will get apparently class skins and 4 new micro classes. Now, I gotta admit, this definitely sounds a bit outrageous, getting 4 completely new classes into the game with just 1 spec. This bit to me sounds least likely, as I feel like that would just be a balancing nightmare, although with a single spec it would be easier to actually make sense out of this entire thing. Apparently, these classes would be the Dragon Knights, 2-handed users, tanks with plate armor and shouts, Tinker class, a DPS class with guns, mail armor and mech suits, Minster class, a healer with musical instruments and leather armor, and lastly, a Chronomancer, healer with time magic, sand magic, and cloth armor. Personally, to me, these definitely sound likely. I've already covered Tinkers and Chronomancers in a previous video, and they have pretty much everything that they need to be turned into an actual class. Like, these could totally be legit. Minstrels to me personally seem unlikely, but the Dragon Knights with the Dragonfly team could 100% be possible. Now, the leak also talked about existing class skins. Apparently, Dark Ranger skin for hunters with taming undead instead of animals and just using dark spell effects, Necromancers for warlocks with plagues instead of curses and summoning undead instead of demons, Nightmare skins for druids with corrupted spell and animal forms, Dragon Sword skin for shamans with draconic spell effects and forms, and lastly a Warden skin for demon hunters with arcane and holy magic instead of fel. Now I gotta say, these class skins would actually be genius. Like, this is a really cool concept and could be a super cool addition. Seriously, it would be the best way to add a bunch of lore classes that already exist in the story to become playable without messing up the game balance, and personally I would really love to see this. I think this is actually an excellent idea. Now, the only issue with this leak is that it was said that the announcement will be on the February 28th with a release date in Q1 2023. With the release date we don't know exactly, but we know that this was not announced in February, although let's be real, it is entirely possible that Blizzard originally planned to announce this in February and just moved the date like they always pretty much do. Personally, I think this concept of this expansion is actually excellent, and this could really bring some freshness into the game, and most of it actually sounds legit, like it is not just people making stuff up. Now, of course, only the name was officially confirmed, so it is entirely possible that the person that wrote the leak was just super lucky to guess the name and now we're just assigning this stuff to him. But let's just wait a week and maybe there is some truth to this leak after all. Thank you for watching. Check out what will happen to the Alliance without ending by clicking on the screen, and check out Donut's Academy for videos on real world history. See you next time.